Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Sheriff Eric Weisburn of the Stark County Sheriff's Office. First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us. We're here today to release key information about a John Doe case that has been weighing very heavily on the hearts and minds of this office for more than 20 years. On December 22nd, 2001, skeletized remains were discovered on Trump Avenue Southeast in Canton Township, Stark County. Despite our investigators' hard work over many years, we could not determine the identity. He soon became known as Stark County John Doe. In 2023, with the help from the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, we released a clay facial recognition of the man, which generated a few new leads. Those leads were investigated but didn't help to identify him. We then asked for help from the DNA Doe Project. Thanks to continued advancements in DNA technology, including investigative genetic genealogy, Stark County John Doe was finally identified. Today, you'll hear from key people who assisted in this case, including the Stark County Coroner's Office, BCI, and the DNA Doe Project. It is a result of this collaboration that today we can announce that we have been able to give Stark County John Doe his name back. He is Anthony Gully of Pontiac, Michigan, who went missing in 1994. Mr. Gully was a homicide victim with a projectile wound that was determined to be from a bullet. To share more about this cold case, I will introduce the people who have been involved, starting with Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost.
Thank you, Sheriff Weisburn, for hosting us today and for your office's work to identify this John Doe. This is kind of a bittersweet announcement. There's the excitement, of course, of accomplishment. Decades-long investigation can now be closed. At the same time, it's a sobering reminder that behind every cold case is a family, a victim that had friends and a life, loved ones. My heart goes out to the victim's family. I know they're watching right now from Michigan. My condolences to all of you. I hope that this gives you some sense of closure after all these years. It's also the second announcement of a John Doe identity that we've had here in Stark County. Our playbook for cold cases remains the 3 T's: teamwork, technology, and tenacity. BCI, of course, always stands ready to assist local law enforcement when requested, a concept I call the force multiplier. We do not have primary jurisdiction in Ohio over criminal acts or investigations. We're here to support those that do: sheriff's offices, local chiefs of police, prosecutors. When law enforcement needs specialized help, things that you can only get with scale because they're expensive, BCI is ready to help. You know, in the movies, every DNA case is finished in a few minutes. This case illustrates the fact that it's not quite that easy. This case involved teamwork between BCI, the Stark County Sheriff's Office, Stark County Coroner's Office, and the DNA Doe projects. Individually, this case would still probably be unsolved. Together, we have been able to give this man back his name. We used all the tools at our disposal on this one to crack the case: traditional detective work, facial reconstruction, DNA analysis. When you watch, excuse me, I took my pages notes out of order. Finally, tenacity. Our teams all worked together and didn't give up. You know, even the discovery of the body after all these years was several years ago, 4 years ago now. The facial reconstruction, the attempts at DNA, he wasn't in CODIS. We had to work backwards to find a familial match. All of that took time. It took not taking no for an answer, not accepting a negative result, but figuring out what is the next thing to do. What's the next question? Where can we turn next to keep trying to find the answer? I'm proud of this team from the state, from local jurisdictions that finally was able to press through. And through their tenacity, teamwork, and the technology that didn't even exist in 1994, able to come to a place of closure. So with that, I'd like to hand off back to the sheriff.
Thank you. Thank you, General. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce BCI Criminal Intelligence Analyst Samantha Reb to speak about the role she played in this case.
Thank you. So my name is Samantha Reeb. I'm an intel analyst and the forensic artist on this case. I'm really grateful to be back here in Stark County representing BCI and celebrating a successful identification. I want to first just kind of reiterate what AG Yost said to the family. Our thoughts are definitely with you guys during this time. Working missing person cases, we work a lot with the families, and we can see the toll that it takes on families that are constantly searching for their loved one. So though these cases can sometimes go unsolved for decades, there's countless individuals that dedicate their careers to trying to solve these cold cases. And I'm honored to work alongside many of these people each day. This case is a great example of the persistent work completed by everyone at the coroner's office, sheriff's office, BCI, the Ohio State University, and the DNA Doe Project. Missing persons and unidentified remains cases are extremely important, especially to our agency. Each year, BCI tries to host a Missing Persons Day, and this year we are hosting that on May 17th in Fairborn, Ohio. We just want to create awareness for missing person cases throughout the state of Ohio and give families a chance to come and meet with us, meet with locals in the area, and kind of learn about the resources that are available. I also encourage anybody, if you can't come to Missing Persons Day and you're still missing your loved one, please feel free to reach out to BCI or your local law enforcement agency to just report this information, check up on the case status. As again, AG Yost stated, there's a lot of new technology out there that we can apply to every missing person case or unidentified remains case. I also want to take time to thank the media for the coverage of these cases. As a forensic artist, I rely heavily on all of you to share these images of the Jane and John Does that I do the reconstruction for, and I really rely on tips from the public to help solve these cases. So your coverage has allowed our message and these pictures to get out, and it's helped solve not only these cases, but also solve cases of other Jane and John Does that may not be the person that's sculpted up here today. And even though my facial reconstruction and there wasn't a tip from the public that solved this case, I'm super happy to be a part of this and to be here. And I'll just pass it back to the sheriff to now bring up the DNA Doe Project.
Thank you, Sam. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Tracy Onders from the DNA Doe Project. The DNA Doe Project played a critical role in this case. We are so grateful for Tracy and her team. Tracy, please explain the work you did to identify Mr. Gully.
Thank you, Sheriff. We are honored to be here today to help announce the identification of Anthony Bernard Gully. Our hearts go out to his family and friends at this time. May his memory be a source of solace and blessing for his family and everyone who knew him. The DNA Doe Project is a nonprofit that provides investigative genetic genealogy research to law enforcement, medical examiners, and coroners across the U.S. and Canada. Powered by more than 100 expert volunteers, we have provided leads for 134 cases since our founding in 2017. For this case, our team utilized GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA, platforms where individuals voluntarily share their DNA to explore genealogical connections. With their consent, these results can be compared to Jane and John Doe's, just like this case, through relative matching and analysis of shared DNA segments. Our team gathered together for a weekend retreat in Texas, where we built family trees for the relatives who shared DNA with this John Doe in an effort to determine how they were related to each other, and then how our John Doe could fit into this unique group of DNA relatives. Our research led us to focus on Anthony Bernard Gully. News reports from 1994 indicating his potential status as a murder victim whose remains were never recovered aligned with our findings. This information was then presented as a lead to Stark County Sheriff's Office, who were able to confirm it. Recognizing the dignity and personhood of unidentified remains restores respect for those left behind, rectifies injustices, and acknowledges the loss to our community and to society. In reports yesterday, Anthony's daughter, Yoshi Carroll, mentioned it's a different type of weight lifted off our shoulders. And we hope that she and all of Anthony's relatives find some comfort from the efforts of so many to make sure that Anthony had his name returned to him and that the family could have some relief for the ambiguity of his loss and an opportunity to bring him home. We are grateful for our partnership with Stark County Sheriff's Office and with everybody up here today. We also would like to acknowledge the complicated lab work that led to this, including lab work done by Estrella, Hudson Alpha, Genealog, and bioinformatics expertise of Kevin Lord. The DNA Dope Project provides our services pro bono, thanks to the generous support of our donors and sponsors, whose commitment is essential in restoring the identities and dignity to those who have passed without a name. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. We will now take your questions. Any of the speakers are available for questioning, along with Sergeant Brian Johnson, who led this case from my office, and Harry Campbell, an investigator with the Stark County Coroner's Office. We'll take a few minutes to answer any questions we can.
Can you tell us more about Anthony as a person, what you learned about him and his life?
Yes, so we were able to meet with Anthony's family up in Pontiac, Michigan there. The last time he was seen, he was 24. He was currently working. He had several children. He was active. Overall, a good person. He wasn't into any criminal activity that we found.
Was he reported missing?
He was. So he was last seen September 3rd, 1994 by his sister. He didn't report to work September 5th. So his employer called his sister. He was entered missing through Pontiac, Michigan PD, September 11th of 1994.
Can you tell us any more about, Sheriff said homicide victim believed to be vulnerable, and can you talk more about that?
Yes, so we had a forensic anthropology report done by The Ohio State University in 2023. When we received that back, that's when we learned that there was a projectile wound to his scapula and left clavicle, believed to be from a bullet at that time.
So has the investigation advanced anywhere to a point where you know anything or can include anything more about that plot?
Yes, absolutely. So throughout this, we ended up going to Pontiac, Michigan, to meet with Anthony Gully's family. During that, we made contact with Pontiac Police Department that we learned was disbanded in 2010 and is currently overseen by Oakland County Sheriff's Office. Oakland County Sheriff's Office still retained Pontiac Police Department's reports from Mr. Gawley's missing person case. Throughout that case, we were able to review it, and it analyzed and resulted in his death was the cause of George Frederick Washington, a.k.a. Ricky Washington. Throughout that report, it indicates that Mr. Gawley was killed in Pontiac, Michigan, and driven down to the Akron-Canton area. Ricky Washington had family and multiple ties to Akron, Ohio. Yes.
What happened to Ricky Washington?
Ricky Washington in 1994, the end of September, got in a shootout with the FBI and Akron police, where he suffered multiple gunshot wounds, and ultimately a self-inflicted wound took his life there in Akron, Ohio. Yes, Bob.
Quick question for Tracy. You mentioned jet match and family tree DNA. Can you explain how this process works when you obtain DNA samples, these swabs from the family, how that works to kind of give you the clues that you need to identify Mr. Gawley?
Thanks so much for the question about GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. These are the platforms that we use for investigative genetic genealogy. Now, when we have the DNA developed, extracted, and then a SNP profile is developed to upload to those platforms. Once we can do that, we can analyze any of the segments that are shared between our subject and the people that have already put their DNA there. So by doing that, then we build family trees for each of those relative matches, which allows us to find a place for where our John Doe could fit. For example, I only have, my 2 sets of grandparents, and they only have 2 grandchildren. So it's a very unique family structure. That's kind of what we're building for this Doe, and which led us to identify Anthony. The SNP profile, which is, it's a digital file, it is uploaded to those 2 websites where it's matched with people who have consented to have their DNA matched. And then we provide a lead for the identity of who we think it might be to the sheriff, who then confirms it. And he is the one who obtained the confirmatory swabs for testing.
The numbers on your website, it says you investigated about 250 cases, helping identify 150. Is that still about accurate? You mentioned 134.
134 leads have been provided. I think we pulled that from the website, but if it says 151, the difference was there are some that were identified before the relative matches came in by other means. So that's the difference between the 134 and the 151. Right. Yeah.
Tracy, this is now the second Stark County John Doe DNA project has helped to identify. Was this case more difficult? Was it more difficult to find his identity than in the last case with Michael Leach? Did you get the cases around the same time?
Each case has its own degree of difficulty. This case had a little bit more difficulty in the lab. So we waited 9 months for the lab work with this case. But once we had the lab work, we were able to make this identification in 24 hours. Now with Michael Leach, which we also worked with Sergeant Johnson, we had that case. It took us about 5 days to provide a lead for that case, but the lab work was shorter.
Sergeant Johnson relates to Michael Leach. Can you provide a function for the family as far as where that stands? Is it still a suspected homicide? Hasn't been ruled
No, I'd say that's accurate, Bob, that it's a suspected homicide. There's clearly suspicious.
That's a coroner's question. I'm ruling this question.
Did you guys rule that a homicide, Michaels?
Yes, Mr. Leach was ruled as an undetermined
Here.
cause of death and also an undetermined. We ruled Mr. Leach as an undetermined as far as the cause of death, because that was never clear. We also ruled that manner of death, which can only be a homicide, suicide, an accident, or a natural death, we also ruled it undetermined there because we simply do not know. Based on the circumstances, there was nothing to say that it was not a homicide, but there's nothing that we can do to prove that at this time. And as far as this case goes with Mr. Gully, a death certificate was issued on this case in Michigan, and I have copies of those if any of you want them. Ma'am? I couldn't hear you.
How many kids? Children?
Um,
Children did he have?
I
Do you
believe,
know the answer?
I believe two. He had a daughter named Raven, who I just spoke with a few days ago. And on a side note with that, I told her that I was the one that actually picked this man up. I did the recovery. And she started crying, and she thanked us all for taking good care of her father. And then we just heard from a son.
There's 4 known children.
4, okay.
Can I ask you, you did the recovery.
I did.
That's what, 23 years ago here?
2001. Yes.
What is it like for you to be standing here 24 years later to have this closure?
Happy for the family. Simple as that. Simple as that. They had someone they loved. Now they know what happened to them. That's it.
Thank you. All right. On behalf of everyone who is involved in solving this cold case, I want to thank you for joining us today. It has been an honor for us to give Mr. Gully his name back and to provide his family with some answers. We hope it has given them a measure of peace. Thank you for coming out today.